All right. Well, good morning, everybody. What is it now? It is 8:11, and it is Monday, March the 31st, in the year of our Lord, 2025. So, good morning. Um, okay, where's our cat here? Oh, oh, there he is. I just give him a little kick there because I didn't know where he was. There he is. We got the patented Camp Crazy Rocky Cam going here again. Trademark registered, so don't try to copy this or I'll take you to court. I'll sue you. Yeah. I'm just kidding, I don't care. But if you copy it, you copy it. They say imitation is the best form of flattery, so if you copy it, then I suppose I should be honored, really. But anyway, and it isn't patented or trademarked or anything, but it is the Camp Crazy Rocky Cam, though. It is. So I don't know if you have a cat or a dog, then you'll have to name it whatever it is. If you want to steal my idea, you'll have to customize it to your own furry friend. I don't know. The Rufus Cam or the Fluffy Cam or the Mittens Cam or whatever, Anyway, you know, I find it interesting how people can be. I'm going to tell you a story. When I was at the garage last Monday, I think it was, to start, it's hard to tell. It's all a blur now. I've been back there so many times. I think I'm going to do what my grandmother told my cousin Alan he should do with Violet. I told a story in another video about a place my dad referred to as a den of iniquity, where my cousin Alan used to hang out. It was kind of a drug den in Perth where my cousin Alan used to hang out a lot. And my grandmother, who was looking after him at that point, my grandparents they weren't too happy about him hanging around there. And I remember one time my grandma was trying to tell him that he needed to stop hanging around there. And she didn't approve of him being there, in that place with everything that went on there. And anyway, he basically told her that she could kick rocks. He would do what he wanted to do. And she says, well, she said, if you like it there so much, why don't you just move your bed in there? So there you go. Anyway, why don't you just move your bed in there, he said. Well, I'm at the point now, I spend so much time around that garage, I think I'm going to just move my bed over to the garage. I got to take my grandma's advice to Alan anyway. I'm going to spend so much time at that garage, I think I'll just move my bed over there. Bring my toothbrush and my jammies and settle in, basically. To set my bed up in the waiting area there or whatever in the customer waiting area. Anyway, but yeah, um, oh my goodness. But when I was at the garage last week, anyway, my friend who owns the garage, it's her and her husband who own it. There's a girl working there, and she doesn't work for them. There's a guy that rents space in the building from them. They own the building, and the guy rents space there from them, and this girl works for him. She's just a young woman, and she works for that guy that rents space from them. So she's not their employee. But anyway, my friend is very conservative in her point of view. She's very traditional and conservative, and she likes Trump. She doesn't like the Liberal government in Canada at all, and so on. And I guess she said something. I was downstairs in the waiting area, and I could hear the argument upstairs. I could hear somebody up there just screaming. And it was just F, 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 F. Every second word was F. They were using F as like punctuation, and it was a female voice. And I could hear my friend trying to say stuff, but she was being drowned out by this girl going F, F, F all constantly. And anyway, after that, I didn't see the girl. There's a back way they can go down into the garage where they don't come through the waiting area. So I didn't see the girl at first. But I was told by my friend after what it was about. And I guess she had said something to the effect of, we need somebody like Trump in Canada to straighten things out here, you know. And she didn't like that. And she said this girl was like a couple inches from her face, roaring in her face anyway. But the girl came in then to the waiting area, and she was talking to the service advisor there, and she was going on about this confrontation that she had had earlier, you know. And the guy in the service area just shrugged his shoulders and said, I don't know. He didn't want to get mixed up in it, you know. He just said, I don't know. So she goes back out, and she can hear her out in the garage again cursing, you know, F, 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 F. Very ladylike. Kind of girl you'd want to bring home to your mom. Bring her home for Sunday dinner, you know. When Grandma cooks a pot roast, we're going to bring that girl around there for dinner. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, every second word F, 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 you know, which I guess I'm old now because I'm in my late 50s, but when I was young, if a girl talked that way, a guy could get away with that, really, although if a guy talked that way, it would limit him socially. Because if you talk that way as a guy, and let's say you were dating a girl, and you met her parents, and every second word out of your mouth was an F-bomb, her parents would automatically not approve of you. And chances are it wouldn't work out with that girl. If her parents didn't like you, you weren't going to get very far with her. And, or if you went for a job, if you were at a job or whatever, if you were applying for a job or if you got a job and you were at work and every second word out of your mouth was F, especially if you were in a job where you were dealing with customers, you know, where people were within earshot of you or whatever, or you were actually dealing directly with customers, again, you wouldn't have the job very long. You know, there wasn't a lot of tolerance for that back. I'm going to sound like an old guy now, but back in my day, there wasn't a lot of tolerance for that. But if a girl was like that, it was really bad. And I remember walking along with my cousin Alan, the two of us. We kind of grew up together. He was a little bit younger than I am, just by a few months. And actually, he passed away at 45 from his addictions and so on. His liver failed, and he passed away. But we were walking down the street one time when we met this girl, and he knew her. I didn't know her, but he knew her. And we had a conversation with her, and she was one of these ones where every second word was the F word. And just very vulgar, very crass, you know. And this was back like in 1982. So, I mean, we were like 14 years old. It was actually the summer of 82. So I was 14, he was still 13. And we met this girl who was our age anyway. And she had a tough look to her, too. I remember that. She had a really tough look to her. And already at that age she did. I'm sure that she had had a hard life. But every second word out of her mouth was the F word. And anyway, after this conversation, as we were walking away, I said to my cousin, I said, you know, I just kind of said, what an awful girl. You know, like, that's what I said. I remember saying that, like, what an awful girl. Like, what on earth? What was that, you know? What an awful girl. And then he told me a really dirty story about her that with a friend of his, again, a mutual friend of ours, but more his friend than mine, more of an acquaintance to me about something that had happened between her and this guy. Anyway, and I won't get into the details, but it was a really nasty, dirty story anyway. It was a sex story, and it was something that she did that was just totally nasty, according to him at least. after meeting her like I did there, I didn't have any trouble believing that it could be true. But anyway, um, so this is an incident, but I can honestly say that girl was an anomaly. Didn't know very many like that. In fact, she's the only one who stands out at all to me. Looking back on it, I can think of one other one. There was another girl that I knew actually who was like that, but otherwise it just wasn't a thing. But now I see it's not that unusual. It seems to be fairly common for a girl to be very crass and profane in her speech and so on. Um, but anyway, this girl kind of reminded me of that when I was there that day. I couldn't help but to think of that girl that I met. And again, this was before that girl that I saw on Monday, before she was ever thought of. I mean, her parents are probably my age, really. So, I mean, the era that I'm talking about, where I met that girl on the street with my cousin, and I thought, what I just said afterwards, what an awful girl. Well, that would be this girl's parents' era too, I'm sure. Anyway, she was just in a blind rage, and she came into the waiting area a couple of times and tried to draw the guy into the conflict, and he wasn't having it. He just shrugged his shoulders and say, "Oh well, whatever." And out she'd go in a blind rage again, cussing and swearing, and she was like that for the day. You could hear her out there going on about, well, again, mad because my friend was a Trump supporter. It ruined her whole day, and it just and she just was throwing a tantrum the whole time. The whole day she was out there throwing a tantrum. Anyway, all of this to say, I've noticed that there's a weird thing has happened in society, and I don't know if it's a form of mental illness or what, but you can't point out things that are obvious anymore, things that are obvious truths, without getting yourself into trouble. Now, that's kind of neat. I can see my reflection in my glasses there. Yeah, hello. Hello, me. Here we go. Anyway, I have an odd sense of humor, what can I tell you? But I do see my reflection there anyway. Yeah. But it ends up that she ends up anyway that I've noticed that, though, that it's like you can't disagree with somebody anymore, or you can't point out something that's obvious, something that's just a common sense thing anymore, or you make yourself a real enemy. And I mean, people go completely crazy. Like, they go to extremes, that they want to physically injure you for that. There's an organization in Ottawa. It's a clinic. It's a counseling clinic for children. And they had an ad. They posted up an ad on Facebook. And they had their flag there and stuff. And they were talking about how they were counselors for children who had suffered sexual abuse and stuff like that, and how they were dealing with that. And anyway, oh, my neck hurts me. Anyway, it ended up that they posted their flag up. They had a flag. This clinic has its own flag, and the flag that they posted up was an amalgamation of the Pride flag, with the rainbow stripes, and they had added to it, though, the pedophile flag, because now what they call them MAPS now, minor attracted persons, because apparently the word pedophile is offensive, so they call them MAPS, minor attracted persons. And but they have their own flag now too, and their flag is like a pale blue with a pale pink, and then there's a pale blue line, pale pink line. You may have seen it, but if you haven't, I'm just describing it to you. Then there's a band of white, and then there's another pale pink line and a pale blue line at the bottom. Apparently, the pale blue stands for is for boys, the pale pink is for girls, and the white is for innocence, which of course the pedophile will take the innocence of the child. And so that's what the pedophile flag, that's what the colors in it represent, apparently. And they had that incorporated into their flag, which was the LGBTQ pride flag. So they had amalgamated the two. Anyway, I pointed it out. I saw that, and I pointed it out in a comment. And I asked, why is the flag for the pedophiles part of your... Why is the LGBTQ thing, for one thing, why is that your flag? And why have you incorporated the flag for pedophiles into it? I don't understand why this is. Because for one thing, it isn't just LGBTQ people who can have a history of being sexually abused. Straight people it happens to as well. So are you a clinic that caters exclusively to the LGBTQ community, or what? Is that the reason for it, or what is it? And why have you incorporated the flag of those who are the abusers? These children that you're counseling, they have been victimized by these people, and you've incorporated their flag into it. And I said, I don't understand why you would do that. Well, I didn't get an answer from the clinic as to why. They just ignored the question, I guess, or didn't see it or something. I just don't know. But never heard from them anyway. Never received any sort of an explanation as to why their flag that they were putting on display in their advertisement was what it was. But I had a lot of people pile up on me over that. And how dare you say anything against this organization? And how dare you point out this, or, and all the rest of it. And it's like, well, look, if I had a kid and my kid had been sexually abused, somebody got a hold of my kid and sexually abused them, and I was going to take my kid for counseling, seeing that flag would turn me right off on that organization. Because they're, for one thing, the fact that it's only catering, it looks like it only caters to LGBTQ. But not only that, which in the end, of course, is their right, but still, that makes it something that I'd be hesitant to participate in. Plus, the other thing is the fact that they've added the flag which represents the person who abused my kid to that flag would also make me hesitant to want my child to be involved there. I said, why are they identifying with the abuser like that? The abuser is the enemy, as far as I'm concerned. So why would you have the enemy's flag? I mean, look, during World War II, if I had been alive back then, and let's say I got drafted into the Canadian Army, and so now I'm over in Europe, and I'm wearing a Canadian uniform, I'm fighting with a Canadian regiment against the Germans, against the Nazis. If I was to wear a German flag on my uniform, get a little German flag and sew it onto my uniform or something, or if I were to wear a swastika, or whatever, that would probably not go over very well. And I'd probably be challenged for doing that. Why are you wearing the symbolism of the enemy on your uniform? Why are you doing that? And that would be a legitimate question. So that's all I was doing, is I was asking this clinic some legitimate questions about their flag, about the symbolism that they chose to use. Why LGBTQ? When sexual abuse happens to everyone, really, regardless of what orientation they are. And why are you incorporating the flag of the people who I perceive, at least, to be the enemy in this situation? Why are you incorporating their flag into your flag? why are you identifying with the abuser? I mean, I understand maybe it's good to understand the other guy in a sense, but understanding and identifying with it are two different things. So to me, if you fly a flag, it's because you identify with whatever that flag represents. And so, that's you publicly saying, I identify with this. What this flag represents, I agree with this, I identify with it. So if you're a counseling service for children who have been sexually abused, regardless of what orientation or whatever, why would you fly the flag of the abuser? And if I were a parent, why would I want my kid to attend counseling sessions where the counselor, where the organization is identifying with the abuser through their flag, through their symbolism? Well, I wouldn't. I mean, let's face it, not something I would do. And so, that's the reason I pointed it out. Well, I got this one guy on there and really going after me. How dare you? How dare you say that? Blah, blah, blah. And it's like, well, I'm pointing it out. And I'm saying how I feel about it anyway. These people are, in my opinion, at least identifying with the abuser. These are people who are supposed to be on the side of the victim. They're supposed to be helping the victim, yet their symbology indicates that they identify with the abuser. I take issue with that. And I've given them every opportunity to explain themselves in some sensible way, and they have declined to do so for whatever reason. Either they didn't see my comment, or they just don't wish to answer the question. I don't know which it is. But the bottom line is, I have given them an opportunity with my comment to explain it in some way that might make some sense. And they have not done that. So, until it's explained to me in some way that would be understandable, that would make sense, I'm going to go with the idea that these people are identifying with the abuser. And I don't think that's a good thing. I don't think these people should be counseling children who have been sexually abused if that's what they're doing, and it looks like that's what they're doing. Well, he come back at me with a bunch more stuff and basically called me a bunch of names and everything. Never made a cogent argument against what I was saying. Just basically said, you're a piece of shit. And, and you should just die, and F you and all the rest of it, and how dare you, and all that. So finally, I said to him, I said, why are you so hot under the collar about this? I said, are you an abuser? Is that why you take this so personally? Because I said, as far as I'm concerned, the abusers are the enemy. This clinic is identifying with the enemy by displaying the enemy's flag as a part of their flag, which is the LGBTQ flag for some reason, which I also don't understand. But I said I could maybe look past the LGBTQ flag, but it's hard to look past the MAP flag that's attached to it. And so I said, why are you so upset about this? I said, are you an abuser? Is that the reason? Well, that really set him off. And then the next thing you know, he's saying to me, I see by your profile you live in Perth. Well, I did live in Perth when I made the profile. I don't anymore. And he said, meet me tomorrow at the Canadian Tire in Perth in the parking lot, and we'll fight. I ignored him. And I ignored him for a few reasons. And I'll explain those reasons in a minute. But here's the thing. This is what he wanted to do. He wanted to fist fight me, apparently, and meet me at the Canadian Tire parking lot in Perth, and we'll fight. I ignored him, And then he sent a message after that. Yeah, I thought so. You're too big a coward. You just run your mouth on Facebook, but you're too big a coward to fight. Well, I'll tell you something. He wasn't entirely wrong. I am afraid to fight, but that doesn't mean I won't. Like if I meet somebody on the street and they're determined they want to have a physical confrontation, I'm going to fight back. I'm going to defend myself. I'm not going to stand there with my arms hanging limply by my sides and be a punching bag. But at the same time, if I were to show up, like he wanted me to show up to fight with him, if I had showed up to fight with him, I would have showed up armed. I would have showed up prepared to kill somebody. And I would have showed up in a mindset where I was prepared to take somebody's life. Because if you're getting into a street fight, there are no rules. It's not boxing. Brawling on the street is not a gentleman's activity. It's not boxing. There are no rules. It's not like, okay, he's had enough, now we stop. The referee steps in and puts a stop to it before somebody dies. That doesn't happen in a street fight. And men do get killed in street fights. It happens more often than most people realize. It doesn't happen as often as it used to because men aren't as inclined to fight as they once were. But when I was a young man, men were still very much into brawling on the street, and men were permanently damaged. Men were turned into vegetables. Men were brain damaged. Men were crippled, and men were killed in street fights. It's a serious thing. It's not something to fool around with. One guy's dead and the other guy is in jail for the rest of his life over some stupid, just some nonsense, really. And I can tell you, when I was young, I got into some fights on the streets. I won a few. I lost more than I won. I never initiated a fight, I will say that. These were fights that were initiated by my opponent in every case. I never initiated a fight, and I got my ass kicked a lot of times. Like I say, if I got into 10 fights on the street, I won 2 of them. So that means I got my ass kicked 8 out of 10 times. So the odds weren't with me in a street fight. And so it's not something that I enjoy. But when I was in my early 20s, because I was being jumped on the street and a lot, and being beaten up a lot, and occasionally winning, but most of the time not winning, and even when I won, there was always drama connected to that, because then there's retaliation. Sometimes the police got involved. Sometimes there was retaliation from friends or relations of the other guy. Sometimes the other guy came around looking for round 2. And most of the time, if I won, I didn't win because I was a skilled fighter. I won because I got lucky. Some weird thing happened during the fight that turned the tables just enough that I got the upper hand and I won. But it wasn't because I had any great skill as a fighter that I won. And it wasn't because I was physically stronger than the other guy that I won. In most cases, the other guy was far more skilled at fighting than I was, and he was far physically stronger than I was. But every so often, and again, you can't take anything for granted in a fight, every so often I would get the upper hand, and when I got the upper hand, I would win. But like I say, even when I won, though, I had to deal with all kinds of bullshit after the fact. So it really wasn't worth it. Even if you win, you don't win. And even if you win, you still get hurt. The other guy's still going to get a few good shots in, and he's still going to hurt you before you get the upper hand. So you're still going to come away from it hurt. And even when you start punching somebody, the shock of that going up through your arm, your hand and your arm and everything will swell up right up to your elbow. And you'll be hurting the next day. You pretty much won't have the use of your right hand the next day because you've been beating on somebody with it the day before. So even if you win, you do suffer for it. And even if the only consequence is that you hurt your hand beating on the other guy, you're still you're gonna be a hurting guy. You're gonna be hurting the next day. You're gonna be one hurting boy the next day. You're gonna be sore, and you're gonna be hurting, and you're not gonna have the use of your right hand. So, I mean, and that's gonna go on for a day or two at least. So even if you win, you're going to get scuffed up and you're going to get sore, and you're going to be a hurting guy. So, like I say, it was like I say, in my early 20s, because I was getting jumped so much, though, I made up my mind that I was going to arm myself and that I was prepared to even murder the other guy in a fight if that's what I had to do. And it didn't take very long before the other guys around town got scared of me, because it turned out I ended up being crazier than they were. And I was prepared to go further than they were. They wanted to beat me up. They didn't want to murder me. In my case, it was like, if you come after me to beat me up, I'll take your life and I'll gladly serve the rest of mine in prison for having done it. And those guys know if you're bluffing or if you're not bluffing, and they knew I was serious. And I had a couple of incidents where there were weapons involved and so on, and I backed the guy off. And in one incident, I hurt the other guy just enough that he knew never to screw with me again. And that's how I had to be. I had to get that I was more vicious than the vicious people who were coming at me all the time. And they came at me because they thought I was weak, which they were right, I was weak. But, again, all that meant is that, okay, I'm not physically strong like they are, but what can I get going in my advantage? Well, I can be crazier and meaner than they are. And that's what I did. I just became more dangerous than they were. So that's the reason that I didn't go to that fight when the guy challenged me. Because if I had went there, I would have went there with every intention of taking his life. And I would have went there equipped to do it. And the thing is, I didn't have to go there. I didn't have to get into that position, so I elected not to. The truth is, I was more afraid of myself than I was of him. But anyway, he thought that I was a coward or whatever, and I thought, well, whatever, think what you want, I don't care. I know the truth, and I know that if I had showed up, there'd be a good chance you'd be carried out of there on a board, and I'd be taken away in handcuffs, and you'd be in the ground, and I'd be in prison for the rest of my life, and that's the reason I didn't do it, for the most part, and the fact that I didn't have to. Now, if I met the guy on the street and he recognized me, and he attacked me, that'd be a different thing, then I wouldn't have a choice. But I couldn't justify morally showing up to a situation that I know is probably going to end with me using a weapon against the other guy, and me either killing him or trying to. And the thing is, you got to bear in mind, too, I don't know him. I don't know what he's capable of. If I do show up, and I show up being as close to a gentleman as you can be when you're showing up to brawl on the street, basically. Again, it's not a gentlemanly pursuit, brawling on the street. But if I were to show up with the intention of doing that, and let's say I intended to be honorable about it, though, and to only use my fist in the fight, how do I know he's not like me? How do I know he's not a guy who's going to bring a weapon? How do I know he's not a guy who's going to bring 6 of his closest friends to jump in if he starts losing? He might bring a carload of guys there to beat me up, and I'm only one man, and here I am, one man unarmed against a carload of guys, or here I am, like I say, unarmed against an armed man, because he may bring a weapon. He may bring a gun or a knife or some other such thing with him. I don't know that he's not going to do that. That's what I would have done. I can't be the only one in the world who would do that. So again, I would have came there prepared not just for a bare knuckle fist fight, but for a lot more than that. And that's why I didn't go. But what I've noticed is that a lot of the people now are so reckless, because they get so mad because now you've disagreed with them, or you've spoken of something that they don't want to be spoken about, or you pointed something out that they don't want pointed out. You've attacked a sacred cow, basically, something that they hold dear in their heart. And so now they're out for blood. And the thing is, what I have learned in the years I've lived in this world is that there are causes worth dying for. There are. And I'm certainly prepared to die for a cause, and I'm also prepared to go to prison for a cause. But you have to use a little discernment. And if somebody on social media points something out that they notice about something and they ask a question about it, I'm not going to get all hot under the collar and be calling them out and inviting them to meet me somewhere so that we can fist fight. Because that's insanity. And like I say, I know how badly that can end. That's just an incredibly dangerous thing to be doing. And, like I say, I had a guy come after me one time because I don't believe in psychology, and he wanted to beat me up for not believing in psychology. And I pulled a tool that I had there. I was taking parts off a car in a scrapyard at the time, and I had a big wrench that's called a breaker bar, which is a great big socket wrench, basically. The thing was about 3 feet long, and it was solid steel, and it was heavy. And I picked that up because I had it there to work on the car, not because I had it there to be a weapon, because I didn't know there was going to be a confrontation. So I legitimately had it there to work on the car. But it became a weapon real quick when that guy came after me. And I tell that story in another video. But the thing is, he put himself in that position with his own stupidity. Now, I didn't hit him because he stopped advancing on me. When I showed him the weapon, he decided all of a sudden that maybe it wasn't such a good idea to keep coming at me like he was. If I hadn't have done that, he'd have cleaned my clock. There's no doubt in my mind that in a bare-knuckle fist fight, this guy would have cleaned my clock. But anyway, that prevented that from happening. And I didn't hit him. I was prepared to. I would have. But he stopped advancing on me, so that it's not something I would have been able to justify in my own mind. Now, he went around and he did what I call a bitch move. And to me, a man who initiates a confrontation and then is forced to back down or loses and then does what this guy did is nothing but a little bitch. And I'll tell you what he did. He went around town and he spread rumors about me. And he made me out to be a bunch of stuff that I'm not in order to turn people against me. And, because he was mad. He was hurt that he went after me looking to beat me up and that I backed him off with a weapon. But like I say, as far as I'm concerned, that's a bitch move. Going after somebody over something stupid like that's a bitch move anyway, though. So the guy was already a little bitch as far as I'm concerned. But the bottom line is, maybe I'm a little bitch too for pulling a weapon on the guy, but if I am, then I'll own that. But the fact is, I didn't think I deserved a beating for not agreeing with him in a conversation a few months earlier that he had stewed over and obsessed over and I'd forgotten about. But anyway, I didn't think I deserved to be beat up for that, and I didn't want to be beat up for it. And so I did what I had to do not to be beat up for it. And I was just as dirty as I needed to be in that situation in order to be safe myself and not take a beating. But the bottom line is, like I say, maybe that does make me a little bitch, and if it does, then I'm a little bitch. But one thing I didn't do is I didn't go around town and spread rumors about the guy and slander the guy. I didn't do that. And I didn't run to the police either. I don't know if he ran to the police or not. I was told by a neighbor that the police had been at my door with paperwork just a few days after that happened, so I wasn't home. But a neighbor had seen a couple of cops standing at my door and they had paperwork with them. So it's possible that he did go to the police. I don't know. I never did hear any more about it. I was followed around a bit after that by the police, though. I noticed they started surveilling me again, which they would do every so often. But they started doing it again anyway, and that went on for a couple months, and then it just seemed to die off. But, so I think he probably did run to the police too, which again, in my opinion at least, is a bitch move. But, like I say, nowadays I find, though, that there are a lot of very volatile people who, if you express a different point of view, they can't handle it. And this is what they'll do, is they'll initiate a confrontation, and they'll do everything they can to get you into trouble, And it's like, this is, I guess it's what we call the cancel culture now. But the bottom line is, you disagree with somebody, fair enough. Maybe you're right, maybe you're wrong, but, like what I saw the other day, what I saw last Monday or whatever with the girl working in the garage, I just thought to myself, what an awful person. She didn't make herself look good. And even if I had agreed with her, and I don't agree with her, but even if I had, I'd have still looked at it and said, that's just inappropriate. Your behavior is wrong. You're at work, for one thing. To behave that way at work is not good. Plus, the woman you got into the argument with owns the building. You basically came into her house, and started carrying on like this. So it's like, if you want to disagree with her, disagree with her. Tell her. If you want to tell her you disagree with her, tell her you disagree with her. Tell her why you disagree with her. Make some cogent argument against what she's said. If she's saying that she thinks Trump is good and she wishes we had somebody like that here, well, if you can think of reasons why that would be a bad thing, tell her so. Have a debate with her. Have a healthy and respectful debate. But getting up in somebody's face and roaring the F word at them repeatedly and calling them names and wishing them all sorts of harm and wishing them dead and challenging them to fist fight you and whatever else, that just makes you look like an idiot, really. I mean, that doesn't make... And then, fuming about it for the rest of the day, and then coming in trying to get other people on your side, which didn't work out very well for her. She was really after the service advisor there. She really wanted him on her side, and he just kept shrugging his shoulders and saying, I don't know. Like, she'd go back out then mad, you'd hear that when she went through the door into the garage again, and it's like, I can tell you, if I was a guy her age, I wouldn't want anything to do with her. Now, again, I'm from that old school, though, too. If I was a guy her age, I might think differently than I do, because I would have been raised in a different time. But, the thing is, as a guy my own age, I can tell you, that turns me off. If a woman is like that, that turns me off. I don't want anything to do with her. As it stands, I'm done anyway pursuing that part of life because it's been really bad. It hasn't worked out well at all for me, so I'm not pursuing it anymore. And to be fair, they've never wanted anything to do with me, women, really. So, again, I'm not what would be called a desirable guy, and when I was young, I wasn't either. But the bottom line is, with a woman like that, like this young woman that I saw, back when I was young, it wasn't just me. There was really no guy wanted a woman like that. Maybe if a guy was, well, like that story my cousin told me about this girl that was dropping F-bombs back in 1982. He told me a really dirty story about her with a friend of ours, more his than mine, more of an acquaintance of mine. And so on like that, a really dirty story. But there again, see, there was drugs and alcohol involved in that, and it was a one-off thing. So, I mean, I suppose that could happen. But as far as having a relationship goes, having anything beyond just a drug and alcohol fueled one night stand, no, I mean, it just wouldn't happen. Wouldn't happen back then. A girl like that was considered damaged goods. Really, she was considered. You didn't want that, and you didn't want a girl that you couldn't bring home and introduce to your parents and introduce to your grandparents and so on, and not be proud to do so. And so anyway, like I say, it was a different era though too. It wasn't like things weren't as they are now. So that's just me passing judgment as an old man, I guess. It'll come from a different time. But even so, I did pick up on the fact that this girl was not, she's not somebody, even if I was a young man, I think I'd be a fool to want anything to do with her. And that's the whole thing anyway. Like, that's not, if she's that volatile, can you imagine her in a relationship if she's that volatile? It'd be constant drama, I mean, you get sick of that in a hurry. A young guy might be thinking with the wrong head and get mixed up with her, but it wouldn't last for very long. There'd just be too much drama, too much volatility. It wouldn't be worth it, Anyway, that's it. This is something I observed last week anyway, and I'm now up to 47 minutes of this rant or whatever it is that I'm trying to do here, so I guess I'll stop now. But there's a point in all of it somewhere. And like I say, the guy that challenged me to fight with him, he has no idea how that would have turned out had I shown up. And really, I have no idea either. Because I don't know what he's capable of, and I don't know who or what he would have brought with him. And so, like I say, I didn't have to show up, and I didn't. I didn't agree to it because I saw no good coming from it. And again, I think that's part of being a mature person too, is, you say, okay, if I have to avoid having this guy hurt me, I'll do something, and I may do something really serious. He may die because of what I'll do, and I may be responsible for that. But if I knowingly walk into that situation, if I voluntarily get in my truck and drive down there, so that I can have this confrontation with the guy, well, then really I deserve whatever happens to me because I'm an idiot. So if he gets the better of me and ends up seriously hurting or killing me, well, this is what I wanted. I wanted the confrontation, and therefore I wanted the results. Or if I end up getting the better of him, especially using a weapon against him or something, and I hurt or kill him, and I go to jail for the rest of my life, well, again, this is what I wanted. This is what I signed up for when I got into my truck and drove down there, knowing that I was going to get into a physical confrontation with that guy. Then I agreed to this outcome. So basically I agreed to go to prison for the rest of my life, which is now what's happening. So I didn't really want to agree to either of those things. So I just declined his offer. But it wasn't because I'm a coward. It was just because I'm sensible, you know. And I have enough experience in the world to know how these things end, and they never end well. I can honestly say I've never been in a situation that ended well like that in a physical fight with another man. I've never been in even the few that I won didn't end well for me, really. They didn't. They just didn't end as badly as they would have had I lost, that's all. And the ones I lost did end badly for me. So, I mean, the other ones ended badly too, but not as badly. And like I say, I just can't understand why people would put themselves in that position voluntarily. And I think I had every right to ask the question, why do you have the map flag incorporated into your flag? Well, for one thing, why are you flying the LGBTQ flag when it isn't just them who gets victimized that way? And why have you incorporated the map flag into that? You know, these people are the enemy. So why is their flag incorporated into your flag? Why are you identifying with the perpetrator when you're supposed to be on the side of the victim? You know, like I say, if you're in a war and you're wearing the uniform of your country, of your side of the war, you don't wear the symbology of the enemy on your uniform. If you do, you're going to be called out for it. The other men in your platoon are going to notice it, you know, and they're going to point it out. Your superiors in the platoon are going to notice it, and they're going to point it out. You may even be court-martialed for doing such a thing. You know, so I mean, you know, you can't do that. So again, I look at it the same way. You incorporate the pedophile flag into your flag. That's the flag of the enemy. You're supposed to be for the victim, not the perpetrator. Anyway, that's the bottom line. We'll see you later.